I'm Marco. I'm with Kaspersky. I'm researcher and manager at the Global Research and Analysis team. The Global Research and Analysis team, just quick, we're the team globally distributed, what the name implies, of course, mainly focusing on researching APTs, highly sophisticated attacks, targeted attacks, look, everything which is like kind of interesting and needs more digging into infrastructures, investigations, and so on. After last year's talk in Geneva here at InsomniaHack, where I was talking about exactly that, like APT groups and connections and things like that, this year I was thinking, why not going into a topic which is getting more and more interesting, more and more important, more and more people getting into this sphere, while I still feel that the information base in terms of security attacks and things, what's happening, it's kind of fragmented. So from my perspective, I thought, let's compile a deck, a talk, to give the people, from my understanding, what I think everybody who's interested in crypto and related, or even active in that sphere, should know, should be aware of, at least as a baseline, in order to understand and be protect themselves. I'm also giving some hints. So I'm going a bit through. Usually I don't do agendas. It's just for you to briefly follow the overall scheme. I start with a few basic things. In the beginning is understanding, and then going from the personal perspective a bit more into the network side of things, going to final conclusions and stuff. Threats one-on-one. There are many, many different things what could happen. And let's stay first at the moment at the personal side, at the user side. From there, if we just categorize it into, I brought it down into 3 different categories. First one, crypto checking. Can either be persistent, like on the machine, or web-based. Right here. That usually implies that you have some piece of malware or code running trying to use the resources of the machine for mining crypto. It's a quite old scheme, not always relevant. It really depends on the crypto itself. And over the time, there also are some quite legitimate uses of these kind of schemes, where like getting rid of ads, but using these kind of like mining resource usage in order to pay for web service usage. So it's kind of an old scheme, but still it's happening and interesting. And even though it's not stealing any crypto from you personally, it may not be always good for your hardware, of course. That's the simple thing here. Oops. My God. Crazy PowerPoint, sorry. The next thing, which is quite interesting, because this is more going into directly stealing things, are everything related to theft. Stealers, keyloggers, fake apps, stuff like that. Targeted attacks, I leave a bit out because I have a more deeper look at that a bit later. One nice example, there are many of these schemes which popped up over the time, either on local machines, different operation systems, but also on mobile. This is just one example of the many, many, many out there. People trying to push fake apps in order to get to the funds of the people using these kind of software. Here, for example, an Ethereum wallet. So if you would install it, you're not the owner of that crypto anymore, which is, of course, not the wanted thing. And the third part, crypto scam. And that's highly active, especially if you're also going into social networks and stuff. Either it's phishing or trying to just grab your attention, basically making you believe you're missing some unique opportunity once in your lifetime. Phishing sites for all kind of different main exchanges which are out there. These are just a few examples for like Kraken, Binance, and so on. They always come and go just in order to get credentials and information in order to get access to the people's funds stored on these exchanges. Hint, that's always a good thing if you don't leave your crypto all the time on an exchange if you're active in this sphere. But we come to that later as well. And the other thing, what I mean with like tricking people into believing you're missing your once of a life chance to get like 1 bazillion euros, whatever, in terms of crypto, can happen on Twitter. Reddit is this example here on Twitter. So there is, from my perspective, no real social network which is not affected with that. And it's always like, hey, here, free giveaway, or we have this fund going, we're sharing between the community and stuff like that. You easily spot this usually, but if you're not aware that this is a scam, for example, if it's a well-known person which is used for the scheme, quite often it was him, but there are many other examples as well. And you believe that person, you follow that person, you think, oh yeah, this is for the best of humanity and whatever, and now he's giving out free crypto. Yeah, let's be part of that. And you just have, in most cases, you just have to pay like a small fee of Ethereum, Bitcoin, whatever kind of crypto. And then you're in this fund and you get back the 10th amount or 100th amount of what you transferred to that fund. Sounds too good to be true. Exactly, that's what's happening here. Fake exchanges is a bit more advanced. These are real, real functioning exchanges where you create an account and then they say, oh yeah, you can start here and it's super easy, low fees or no fees at all and whatsoever. Just to activate your account and be able to trade crypto, you just have to transfer a small amount of crypto to the exchange and then you're in the game and you can do whatever you want. People who are not really familiar with, so I've seen this a lot of times, this is just one example of the many, many out there, fall into that if they're not fully aligned with what exchanges are there, which ones are trustworthy or not, because this area still is not really easy to overlook. But let's take one step back. Not only the technical aspects are relevant, but also a bit, what do the people see themselves? And for this, we together with Arlington Research did research on like a questionnaire about different people, 12,000 people, different groups like regular users, owners, passive owners of crypto, non-owners of crypto, to get a bit of their understanding and feedback about crypto itself. And I think that's quite interesting because over the years, from 2019, where it was done first, to 2022, last year, we just started in 2023, the awareness of crypto already rose tremendously. In some countries, like Far Eastern, for example, it's a bit higher, but generally, nearly 1/3 of people are aware of, yeah, there is this thing called crypto, whatever. But nearly half of people are afraid to invest into. Of course, it's volatile, drawbacks, and so on. And there's threats. not really many people are aware of threats. And that was also one thing where I thought, okay, let's push this topic a bit more out and talk about this. What's really going on? What kind of threats are there? And not many people really have enough information. That's also one thing what I see quite often. For example, on Reddit and whatever, newcomers come, hey, how can I get into crypto and so on? And depending if they're good people or not good people replying to these threats, people can get tricked or not, which is not the best way to go. So it's important to share information, share knowledge with everybody. And top concerns, especially the 3 pillars, what we just had before. So crypto theft is a kind of leader, followed by scam. Crypto checking, not so much, as I said before, because it may also be used for not criminal, but legal kind of activities. Especially in Europe, also blackmailing is one thing people are concerned about. So, yes. And one of the, for me personally, most interesting thing is, and that's kind of contrary to what I initially always thought about people interested or active in crypto, about regulation. So 32% of the people we asked supported enforceable laws and more regulation towards crypto, which kind of, I'm not sure. Main idea behind many crypto projects is kind of freedom, decentralization, and stuff like that, which may be tricky to implement proper regulation and stuff like that, which usually in many areas focus on more centralized kind of schemes. So, having that said, let's dig a bit deeper into the rabbit hole. By the way, just as a in-between disclaimer, I'm not talking either against nor in favor of crypto, just for your understanding. It's just about sharing information. Targeted attacks, which is kind of interesting because it shows more advanced things, what also active APTs and advanced groups are doing. There are many APT groups, advanced persistent threats, if you're not familiar with that term. So very, very highly professional groups of actors, in most cases conducting espionage attacks, sometimes in rare cases also kind of sabotage, destructive attacks. But there is this one group which is also actively stealing money. And that's Lazarus and one of their subdivisions, Blue Norov. They were already known, maybe you heard it from the press, many successful attacks against big banks, getting out a lot of money. And because there is a lot of money in crypto as well, that's also an area they're trying to get into or already into for quite some times. One of the more recent and quite huge investigations we did, you can also look it up here at SecureList. It's a very long, detailed analysis to get all the technical aspects of that. So I just give a brief overview about things which are interesting. First of all, Blue Norov Lazarus victims are not locally bound to any kind of region. Mostly they're active in Asia, but also Europe, North America, Russia, and so on. So where is money? They try to get into and get the money. In this specific scheme, and that's quite interesting. Let me tell the story. They first try to stalk and monitor not only individuals, but also crypto startups, projects, and monitor their activities, try to understand social interactions. This can go on for weeks and months to fully understand how this team, how this company is set up, who communicates with whom about what and how, what topics are interesting. And with all of that intelligence they gathered over a long period of time where no direct attack happened. It's just monitoring. It's just simple, silent monitoring about the peer structure. With that intelligence, they try to craft super highly quality spear phishing attacks in order to trick these people, specific people they selected, with the direct attacks, which can, for example, be these kind of things, Word documents. That's quite a very famous and often used scheme. They're doing agreements, assess investment strategies, docx. That's the trick here. So you open it, it's a Word document, and it's a maliciously crafted Word document trying to get from a remote source to load script, gets executed, and then infect the machine. So it's weaponizing documents. It's quite an old CVE, 2017-0199. They try this quite often, and if that's not working, they've tried to go through other ways, but usually because they have these kind of high-quality spear phishing attacks, there is no need to drop a no-day, which saves them money for the biggest profit. Very easy. The execution, I'm not a big fan of these. This system works a bit different than mine, so sorry for that. So, as I said, you get a specially targeted spear phishing email to that company with a Word docx document, what I just showed you. And there they're doing fingerprinting, which is quite interesting because it's not just random. Not everybody who gets that will also get into the next stages. So they do a proper fingerprinting, check the target, of course, and then either share the template, like the remote document, or just nothing. Sorry, like that. Or just nothing, and that's it. If they got these additional code, the system gets infected. And in this recent attack, that was quite interesting. That's also why I put this here. They were not only going towards spying, stealing stuff, which is just on the system, but also actively going into probably one of the most famous wallets used out there, MetaMask. So they check if that's installed, and if it's installed, they rework the code, which is super tricky to identify. You can do it if you actively look it up and see if the source is proper Chrome Web Store or if it's unpacked extension. Because what they're basically doing, they're changing the locally stored JS files of that browser extension in order to do either two of two things or both after one another. The first one is a code injection. This is just a small subset. You cannot easily spot this because that file is huge. It's a few megabytes with hundreds of thousands of lines of code. The background JS, it's called, I think, if I remember correctly from MetaMask. And what they're doing here is just monitoring. So they add a piece of code which just do monitoring. So it sends all the information about all the transmissions going on from MetaMask to their backend. And we believe that they have quite some intelligent monitoring about crypto transactions. And if they have a valid target with quite some crypto in that wallet, they will just they have an additional piece of code they add to steal the tokens. And here comes the thing, and that's always this interesting part. Many would say like, yeah, no problem, I have a hardware wallet, so I see what's going on and I can sign it, and I don't rely on the software itself. Yes and no. They're basically waiting for the user to do a transaction, and you have to actively sign it with your ledger, whatever kind of hardware wallet, and just change it with this attack code to transfer the full funds, what they have in their wallet at once. You sign it because you think like, yeah, it's a transaction. I just initiated in the software, so I trust myself. I just click transfer. You sign it. You don't check the stuff. Come on. Who reads all the hex codes on your hardware wallet? You sign it and it's gone. That's the thing about hardware wallets. They protect your keys, but still you're the user. And if you're tricked into signing something, no one can protect, even the hardware wallet cannot protect you from doing that, because you actively said like, yeah, that's fine. That was me. It's my transaction. Do it. Another attack. Also, we have this article up on SecureList. By the way, I have my contact details at the last slide. If you're interested in that slide, I can share that. What they're doing here is they piggyback on a regular software. So you download an installer, and in that installer you have a regular application and a malicious application, and that malicious application then changes the legitimate one. But you think, oh yeah, it's a legitimate application, no problem. You see the regular installation screen and whatsoever. You're not aware of what's happening in the backend. And they did this with a DeFi wallet. So this is proper and everything, but in the backend, there is a stealer running, trying to get the information from the machine and so on, stealing all kind of personal information from the machine. So these are just two huge things what they did towards DeFi and crypto. Quite interesting, and especially that's part about hardware wallets, so keep that in mind. That's important to remember. Another quite recent actor, Naive Copy, like that. They're active since somewhere 2021. Before, they mostly also used this scheme of Office documents, but they also included in their more recent attacks binaries. So, for example, this Binance certification setup thingy, which of course is not legit. That's fact. But you think like, yeah, I need to install that certification. Click, 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 installed. You see the legal notes and so on after the installation. So looks proper and everything, but of course you're just fell victim to a malicious binary. These are just a few examples of what can happen and is actively happening on the user side of things. Maybe you spotted already, against a few or most of these things, you could do something. You have your proper security software, you have super good procedure when you get like emails or ping through the social networks. Maybe not, but let's just assume that. So against a lot of these more locally focused threats, you could do something. But the interesting thing about crypto, it's not a local thing. And it would be too easy to say, oh yeah, the internet is global and social networks, for example, are also global and social connection, yada, yada. But the specific thing is that also a lot of intelligence and the real core is a distributed blockchain, right? I mean, that's the full core about what crypto is, right? And one thing emerged over the past few years, more and more, because more and more functionalities were added to major blockchains, and that's so-called DeFi. Stands for which decentralized finance, basically means peer-to-peer financial services. I try to stay away from buzzwords. So this is not a buzzword talk. We are technicians here. We're talking about security, right? So let's not do that. But still, this is something on top of a few blockchains. For example, Ethereum is probably one of the most dominant ones in that area, but also Solana, Polygon. There are some additions to Bitcoin itself, but traditional Bitcoin is not considered to be like that DeFi kind of thing, because DeFi means that you have, for example, smart contracts on a blockchain. That's something, everybody, when you hear smart contracts, oh yeah, Ethereum, I know that. Right. So it's a piece of code, basically a contract written in code, stored on a blockchain, and you can interact with that. It's used for example, for funding, for lending of crypto, staking, and that kind of things. There are a few more things, also so-called D-apps, so distributed apps, also running on a blockchain, which are often used for so-called DEX, distributed exchanges. So what we just seen before, like Binance, Kraken, Coinbase, and so on, they're centralized exchanges. It's one entity. You go to that one website and you buy or sell or trade crypto at that one centralized entity. DEX means you have on that blockchain distributed an exchange running, like Uniswap, for example, and that's also a DeFi application, basically. There are different understandings of what DeFi is, but let's not get into this buzzwording kind of thing. Having a look at at DeFi attacks itself, I also added. Come on, there is this nice website, DeFi Llama. Very nice if you're interested in DeFi projects and things. Have a look at them. They also track a lot of hacks happening. And that was quite interesting when I looked at that. You see clearly that especially the last year, 2022, that was painful for DeFi because many, many hacks happened. And we're not talking about like centralized exchanges like FTX or whatever dropped or volatility of crypto, but no, this is attacks going on in the DeFi scene. And with quite some losses. I mean, when we're talking about nearly $6.45 billion US dollar, that's a number. Right? I mean, come on. Who doesn't want to have nearly $6.5 billion, right? Let's go through a few of them because that's interesting. Because these are things you have no direct control about. That's why I say that's the network. That's what you're using. And you need to trust it. And you need to know what's going on. And there it can get complicated. Let's pick a few examples and go through a few incidents which happened with a bit of technical stuff going on. One, or probably the biggest hack happened in DeFi was the Ronin hack. More than $600 million were stolen. And the problem here was a private key was compromised. Not only one, but a few, like 5. And they had some mistakes in the configuration. So blockchain, DeFi, peer-to-peer means you have basically a lot of physical servers running somewhere around the world. can be VMs, whatever. It doesn't need to be physical machines, but it's systems running the core, the back end of the blockchain on which these things gets executed. So, and they have their own backend structure, servers, and out of the many they have, 5 private keys, like the keys to validate, to set up, to host, to run, to operate these machines, were hacked. And one, that's the XEDAO, was sadly misconfigured in a allow list to distribute like free transactions. And that was basically, you got the private key, you had a misconfiguration in the network, and the attackers abused that and transferred off $600 million. Sounds easy, but first you have to understand that network. So there is quite a lot of effort in doing that. As I said, that was the biggest one. I also have here some links to that. As I said, I can share later on. The interesting point here, like the second interesting point, besides being probably the biggest DeFi hack, is that nearly a month, a bit less than a month later after investigation, there was an official announcement by US agencies that the attack was attributed to, you guessed it right, Lazarus. Oh, we just talked about Lazarus before. Interesting. Looks like that. A lot of text, Lazarus group, yada, yada. And this here is the interesting big key because that's where the stolen funds got transferred to. That's again the good side on a lot of crypto projects, that with the blockchain mean you have the full database of the transactions. That's not true for all crypto. Keep that in mind. That's important. You cannot follow all the transactions for all crypto. There are a few which are encrypted, and there's at the moment no real way to see into that. For example, Monero, that's often said to be like, yeah, super secure. And then some companies said like, yeah, no, we can monitor it. Yeah, no. It's still trying to break it, but it's not the case at the moment. Another super interesting thing, it was a bit less than the Ronin hack, was the polling network hack. Also more than $600 million stolen, so we're talking about money, right? And there was a problem, there was a direct vulnerability in the code of this DeFi project, which was exploited, that the attacker could modify the so-called keeper on that thing, like in that contract that's running on the Ethereum-based blockchain. And with the access control exploit, they were able to grab out the money. That's it. Psh, done. $600 million. Interesting and quite often used in many, many different attacks is the reentrancy attack. LandFME hack, Burger Swap, but many, many others. So really it was quite a list, especially last year where this attack was used. So I'm just explaining the principle. You set up a malicious contract, and that malicious contract has some changes to regular contracts. The attacker's contract asks from the main contract, oh yeah, here, get me 1 Ethereum. Let's put it simple, 1 Ethereum. And that's, okay, I send you the funds. Send the funds, 1 Ethereum here. And before the balance gets updated, it says like, hey, come on, send me 1 Ethereum. And it checks like, oh yeah, there is 0 Ethereum here because that's the idea of this malicious contract. I have no Ethereum here, and it sends 1 Ethereum. And that basically goes around and around and around. It's a logic flaw, basically. It's This should not happen anymore, but it was actively used in many attacks last year. That was also one of the reasons why more and more DeFi projects get their code checked and reviewed, where against especially these kind of attacks, it's checked that if it's possible or not to do these kind of super simple attacks. I mean, that's a no-brainer kind of thing. It should not happen anymore. But that are the things you have to be aware of if you're interested or active in that sphere. Did they check their contracts and stuff against these kind of attacks? Another interesting thing, and that's a bit tricky because how do you evaluate if it's attacker or not? So let's put it like this. A flash loan attack means you get a flash loan. Flash loan, you have a provider and you can lend certain amount of money. Everybody from us knows that. I mean, with the credit card, the same. You go to a bank, basically, you say, oh yeah, can you lend me 100 euros, dollars, whatever? Bank says, oh yeah, here is it. But when you pay it back, you also have to pay an interest of, I don't know, 10 euro, whatever. You do something with the money and then you have to return it back after a period of time. Flash loans is basically a similar principle, but much more faster. So we're not talking about like days, weeks, months, years, whatever. You're taking the loan, but very short times. And in that cycle of the loan you're requesting, you have to do something with the money, but you have to pay it back. If not, the whole chain, what you were doing, gets reverted. So it's kind of a contract. It starts, and only if the finish is reached, the contract is fully executed. If not, everything gets reverted. Quite an interesting thing. So basically what could be done is you take a flash loan, the attacker does something with it, arbitrage trading, liquidations, whatever kind of things, can be malicious trading, changing things, price oracles, for example. I just showed in the next example something which could also have been based on a flash loan attack. And then money done, and you pay back the loan, and you're left with money. Simple principle, if you take into consideration what I said, the so-called price oracle attack. And that's one step further. Happened to the Mongo market. There is, I always have to click twice to also get the link. There is a nice write-up on Twitter under this name of the guy who did it with screenshots and everything and explained everything. So I'm just giving a very brief overview about how this happens. So price oracle is, you have to find somehow a price for the token. Okay? The good thing is if it's done decentralized, because decentralized, good, more reliable. You have more nodes, more validators, more intelligence to not allow simple manipulations. If you have it centralized on one market, you could play with it and manipulate it if you know how you're doing trading. So what this attacker did, not going into too crazy details on financial side, but basically he had two accounts, account A, account B. And he had a simple 10 million US dollars in his pocket. Yes, I mean, how many people have a simple 10 million US? Anyway, that's how it happened. So with one account, he offered perps, which is basically kind of a short position if you would compare it to regular stock trading. And with his account B, he bought this Preuss, which is basically like a time-based contract that you pay this agreed amount of money to that owner of the short and stuff, and everybody seeks to get his share out. But account A and account B was from the same person. That's the basic here. So they were trading on a very low limit, like 0.03 whatever US dollar per one token. So we're talking about millions of tokens. After that was done, he was throwing in a bit of more money. Yeah, he was quite a wealthy guy, it seems. And because it was a centralized price oracle, like price finding mechanism, and the more money it gets in, it gets traded, usually changes the value of the token. So what he was doing, he was putting so much money and trades into that he was able, due to the centralized price oracle, to trade the value up to 0.91 US dollars. Which basically led his account B with a Preuss to a value of more than 400 million US dollars based on that. That was the flaw, like the centralized price oracle. So he attracted just 160 million. Why 160 million? That's a good question. That was basically all the liquidation which was in that market. So he completely killed the liquidation of that market. He sucked out every money which was on this Mango market. And that's done. Of course, you may say, oh yeah, what about this 5 million in account A? There was no more liquidation, but he already made out of a bit more than 10 million, more than 100 million. So basically, this 60 million, you can say like, yeah, that was his investment. So he got that claim back with the benefit of 100. That's a nice deal. I mean, we're talking about a few minutes here. Like, that did not happen about hours or days. That's a few minutes. Like, if you go and get a coffee and get back, this already happened. That's the tricky thing. And if you just combine this, that's also what happened at some attacks. This price oracle attack with like the central price oracles with a flash loan, like you even don't have to invest a lot of money yourself. You just get a loan. Of course, you have to pay back the interest. Of course. But if you go into any of these kind of schemes and you make like out of 10 million, more than 100 million, I think paying back the initial loan and a bit of interest is like not the big thing, right? But there's good news. It's not all bad. The good news is that there are successful investigations and arrests from the crime and law enforcement agencies. Just a few examples, because I think that's important to know. It's not just things happening and they just get away with that. We had this arrest, I think that was already beginning of this year, January 2023, where was mostly the French police arrested the founder of one kind of malicious crypto exchange, which was also involved into a lot of crypto fraud schemes. Because of, I mean, that's natural, like the people stealing crypto or doing anything bad in crypto, at some point, they need to cash it out, right? So you need to have some exchanges to convert the crypto back into dollar, Swiss francs, euros, whatever. Another, and that was also interesting because we were just talking about DeFi exploits. That was end of February, so not long ago, that the French police arrested one who is allegedly associated with also one big exploiting of DeFi protocol, that was Avalanche. So also big success there. Very good. And I guess that was kind of known. That also suspect of the tornado crypto clean washing servers kind of thing was also arrested. It's a mixer basically where criminals put on money, like crypto, and this mixer tries to hide the origin of the owner and sends it to a lot of other addresses, and then the other addresses are clean washed, freshly new ones, nice. And then the criminals can take that crypto and exchange it back into real money, whatever, on exchanges, because it's not directly linked to the initial criminal wallet address. Because we remember the blockchain stores transactions. So you know where a fund was going in most of the blockchains, like Ethereum, for example, and that was an Ethereum mixer. So you can trace all of that. And then you have this mixer, money gets in, it's a contract basically. Contract, again, DeFi. And this contract sends it to a lot of, like it distributes it to a lot of other addresses. So you cannot say like, yeah, where is what money going? And if you mix all of that, not only with criminal activities, but also regular users who just want to protect their privacy and stuff like that, how can you identify who is now the real owner of that address where 100 Ethereum? Is it from that ransom operator trying to mix like 1,000 Ethereum, or is it from that small person who invested like 10 Ethereum in order to spice up his life and buy a new car or whatever kind of stuff? And this also came out, which links again back to kind of earlier, that the US Department put 3 suspects of the North Korean military hackers regarding Lazarus on their wanted list. Yes. We talked a lot about Lazarus, right? But it's interesting. So, what can you do? So, first, that's already mentioned, hardware wallets. Yes, it's a good advice to not leave your crypto at an exchange, because centralized exchanges, we've seen it with FTX, they can go down, right? People can try to get your credentials, like phishing, scam, whatever, fake apps to get into your account. Same thing. Crypto, if you have and you are the owner of your own keys, that's good. Hardware wallet makes it a bit nicer because it's not on your computer, so it cannot be directly stolen. There are many stealers trying to get the wallet that, for example, from software wallets installed on a computer. And if you can crack it, then he's the owner of the funds, right? Cannot happen with a hardware wallet if you are not tricked. Update your stuff, important, and check your software, what you installed, especially don't trust third parties, and check what wallets you have running. If you have MetaMask in your browser, check that it's a valid thing. And yeah, scam. There are many evolutions going on into that sphere based also on AI. Probably everybody heard about these voice spam thingies, fake videos and stuff like that. So a lot of options are going on here in terms of tricking people. Be aware of that. We are already more than 50 minutes. As you see, we just tipped the peak of the things. It's a baseline. I just try to give a first overview. If we were digging into each of these things, we would sit here probably for a few weeks. We can do that, but I mean, tomorrow's weekend, so I want to go home, you know. But at least it's something to understand. Threats are not only on the user side, as most of us are familiar with, especially when we're talking about crypto, DeFi stuff. There is this layer you have nearly no control about. And if you're running on a contract, you're using any kind of these things, and there is a flaw in, your funds are at risk as well. So check if it's valid. Try to check if there are source code reviews, stuff like that. That's the only thing what you can do. May sound complicated, but I think we're getting there, right? By the way, how many people here own crypto or are interested in owning crypto? Sorry, I need to ask this question. Very good. Hodl. Okay. Thanks. I'm here a bit longer for a few questions if you have any else. There is my Twitter handle. I can share my slides, open for discussions. If there's anything, let's talk. Thanks and enjoy the rest of the day.